Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, Jack. It's great to be here. It's an honor actually to be here. I should probably tell you a little bit about myself to get you to know where I come from. I worked as an employee owner for 26 years for an organization called Web Industries. 89, and at the end of 2015, my ESOP account balance was so large, pleasantly large, and in addition to my 401k, I looked at the situation and I said, you know, I now have an opportunity to stop working full-time. And it was at that point that I was able to move on and do other things. Coming to Web Industries in 1989 was very interesting. I started out as a machine operator. I ran machines for approximately 4 years, and after that I got into frontline management, which I did for another 22 years. I don't know if we have any frontline managers or anyone in management role, but the person on the front line who's managing people or managing staff, critical role in any organization. And I learned so much about managing people and leadership on the front line. Web Industries is essentially a converting slitting operation where they will convert and slit flexible materials. All materials that go into any product have to be taken from a large format down to a smaller format. They also do laminating, extrusion, sheeting, and anything that has to be converted. Was in a very old facility back in 1989 in Framingham, Massachusetts. Very old facility. And when I think back today at where they are, amazing how far they've come. The markets they're serving is aerospace, medical, they're serving wire and cable. And if you think of things like the new planes that are being built with composites, Web Industry is a leader in slitting composites. So much growth. Over 45 years the company's been in business. It's tremendous when I think back. I only started in '89, but well before that, they were doing their thing. There's over 550 employee owners of Web Industries. It started their ESOP in 1985, and the year 2000 was a banner year for them, and that's when it became 100% employee owned. And that was a big time for us because we realized, you know, we don't just own a small piece of it, we own the whole thing. Great time. We have facilities in Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, Indiana, Georgia. We have a facility in Texas, and we also have built a facility in Germany. And a lot of growth. Bob Fulton, the original owner of Web Industries, who started out in a very small garage in Boston, Mass. With one machine, as he was getting older and thinking about what he wants to do with his life, he decided that, you know, based on his values and what he believed, that it was the employees who built his organization should be the ones to own it. It fit his values. So he created the ESOP in '85, and in 2000 we bought out the rest of the company from Bob. Now, my journey with the great game of business and open book management started back in 1992. And I don't know how many people have a copy of the original, there we go, hardcover version of the Great Game of Business, right, with the American flag on it. Hardcover, right? So this book, we read this book as part of a reading group at our Framingham, Massachusetts plant in 1992. Reading groups are very common in Web Industries. They still to this day have reading groups. We sit down, a bunch of us read a book, and we would talk about it. We happened to read The Great Game of Business. Our organization at that time was struggling. Framingham was about that close to going out of business. And as owners, we really felt it. And it made sense reading the book, because how can you possibly be an owner if you don't know how to run a business and how to affect the finances of the business? You can't really be an owner if you don't understand that. So that was my introduction to it. And then in 1993, The Future of the American Workplace Conference happened in Chicago. I got an invitation from the White House. President Bill Clinton sends an invitation to the Framingham Plan addressed to me. So I get this thing, they give it to me, and I'm looking at it. It's fancy white envelope with a symbol of the president on it and stuff. I'm saying, okay, who's playing a prank on me, right? I mean, what's the joke, right? So I open it up, and sure enough, it's an invitation to the Future of the American Workplace Conference. Jack was on the panel, and essentially what it was a conference that the president wanted to see what the future of the American workplace would look like. Now, this is back in 1993, so you got to kind of put yourself back there a little bit. Secretary of Labor Robert Rice was also on the panel, and Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown. And I do have a clip, a video clip that I'd like to show of myself talking with President Clinton. It's about a 3.5-minute clip. I think you may find it interesting. I just want to warn you, I look much different back then than I do now. So a fair warning on that. You got to think back 1993. If we could play that, please.
I'd like now to call on Robert Zicaro, who is a frontline employee from Web Converting Incorporated, an employee-owned company, to discuss the issue of innovative pay systems and how that relates to the issue that was discussed by the U.S. West folks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do feel that, first of all, I think I should probably say why I'm dressed like this. It's not in disrespect to you, of course. This is the way I would be working every day.
Disrespect to me.
What I was wondering is why the rest of us aren't dressed like that.
Well,
He's the smartest one. The lights are so hot up here. He's the smartest one of all of us.
This is the way I would be working and running my company today. Being Monday, I would certainly be on the front lines running a machine. Being a machine operator, and I'm also a coordinator of a self-directed work team. It's been very interesting listening to all these discussions this morning. And to me, what we're doing at Web Industries, employee ownership seems to be the core thing that will tie all these workplace systems together. Yes, we do have self-directed work teams. We call on customers directly. We do our own scheduling of work. We do our own ordering of materials and other problems that come into the work team. We also have a reading program that educates people. We actually read books on company time. Max Dupree, Leadership is an Art. Dr. Deming, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We certainly believe in learning, as you had talked about in your speech at lunchtime, is very, very important. And I was really interested in, Secretary Wright, your comments about when you were visiting various companies, a sense of ownership. I have ownership, not just a sense of ownership. There is a difference. We're sharing financial information. Each month we get a 3-page document, and we know everything from the cost of the phone calls, cost of goods sold. The whole balance sheet is right in front of us. I guess in a sense we're learning to become business people. And I think that's something that was missing throughout the whole thing so far today. And if we want to make it real, do we want to just have workers and management like we've had for years and years fighting? Or do you want to really own a piece of the American dream? We talk about bottom line, very important. Because we do get our financial results, we know what the bottom line is. In Web Framingham, the last 6 months have been the best 6 months ever in the history of that plant. I don't think it's an accident. I think finally people understanding that if we're going to make all these workplace practices more than a fad, because we'll just be here 2 years from now talking about something new, old wine, new bottles, that type of concept, and we're going to wonder whatever happened to last year. This answers the question, why? Why would a worker want to get involved in a self-directed work team, take on more responsibility, be accountable, call on a customer, go the nine yards or more? If you're an owner, you have a responsibility, and you know what that means. And now I think that's the difference that I think hasn't really been touched on today. And I was curious, Mr. President, what you thought of employee ownership. That's something that is just really not talked about much.
I'm very interested in it. I think the government ought to be supportive of it. The experience is are somewhat uneven, but where it works very, very well.
So as I said, you know, this is going back a ways. So I can't tell you where my hair went, but I just know that my hair is not the same, among other things. But yes, we were struggling, and just to move along on the presentation, then a lot of this was experimental. It really was. For the first time, we were having machine operators use a calculator to figure out revenue per labor hour. Now you got to understand, we had just had a high school education. We never had to do this before. And it was very empowering. And what was happening was, slowly but surely, we were moving from feeling victimized to feeling empowered. In other words, we had more control over our future. That's what started to happen. The culture started to change. And year after year, as that happened, we became more successful. By the year 2000, Webb Framingham became so successful we could build a brand new facility in Holliston, Massachusetts. The same year, the company became 100% employee-owned. So in about 8 years, it's not overnight, in about 8 years, tremendous change. Open book management with employee ownership reinforced each other and made it happen, in my opinion. The share price, of course, was growing larger by leaps and bounds. We were generating more cash, more earnings. Quarterly bonuses were getting very large. In a lot of cases, quarterly bonuses were equaling as much as $2.50 an hour in addition for a person's hourly wage. That's a lot of money. Okay, so this really started to take hold. From the year 2000 on, it certainly made the company, in my opinion, much more successful. Some of the lessons that I've learned over the years, it's what's behind the numbers that matter. And we found that out when we moved into our new plant. Yes, we can share the numbers, of course, but what are the drivers of those numbers? The processes, the systems you used, success principles, lean manufacturing. Once we started applying those principles, we became even more successful financially, and our market share grew when we started to get new customers. I also learned that open book management is really about organizational development and change. Once you go down this journey, there's really no going back, because now you've shifted the relationship to the company. You know, people have a different idea of what the company is all about and their role in it. Personally, my knowledge of finance that I learned from the great game of business and open book management still serves me well to this day. Employee ownership, why am I passionate about it? It's the real stake in the outcome, as far as I'm concerned. It's one thing to ask people to think like an owner and act like an owner, but when you have an actual ownership stake, that's the real deal. You can't fake it anymore, right? You can't blame anyone else. You can't blame the owner. You're the owner. Who are you going to blame, right? So it really matters in that aspect. Open book management and employee ownership, I feel, go hand in hand. They reinforce each other. You can't really have one without the other. You can't be a good employee-owned company without open book management. Practicing open book management, I believe, takes you almost all the way there, but without the equity portion, in my opinion, you miss out on reaching the full potential of what open book management has to offer. Wages make us a great living. We know that. But ideally, if you really want to build real wealth, you need to have equity. Employee ownership, to me, has changed my life in ways that I never thought would ever happen. Here I am standing up on this stage talking to you folks. That never would have happened, okay, if I didn't get involved in an employee-owned company. It makes the free enterprise system much more inclusive. We hear a lot of talk about wealth disparity in our country. The gap is getting wider and wider. It's unsustainable. But for over 40 years, employee ownership has been shrinking that wealth gap. There's over $1 trillion worth of value in ESOP accounts in the United States of America. There's over 10 million participants in ESOPs, over 6,600 employee-owned companies through ESOPs. So it makes a difference. It's changed my life. And I like to end my presentation, if you just bear with me. I'd like to just read a couple paragraphs from the original version again. So I'm going back to what Jack was speaking in a chapter called The Company of Owners. And it's just a couple paragraphs that's really hit home for me, and I thought today made sense for us to remind ourselves about this. Equity can provide the greatest expansion of wealth most people will ever see. It's like hitting an oil field. I can't think of any other game that offers the same odds and a comparable payoff. And I've played a lot of games. I've put money on just about every event you can bet on. This is the best deal around, hands down, because you can influence the results. You can pretty much determine whether you win or lose. Who invented this game of capitalism? I sure didn't. It was here long before I came along. I'm just teaching how to play it, showing them what an incredible game this really is. When you hit the equity jackpot, you can do more than pay your bills. You can actually achieve some of your dreams. The opportunity is there. If you take it, you can create a better life for yourself and your family. That's the best reason I know for playing the great game of business. It's the message we are constantly sending out to the people who work at SRC. Equity makes the message real. And it was true 25 years ago, and I would say it's true today and will always be true. I want to thank you very much for having me here at the staff at a great game. It's been amazing. What an incredible conference it's been. And I wish each of you much success. You are literally changing lives. Make no doubt about it. You are changing people's lives. And I wish you the best. Thank you very much.